that being said, we're going to get on to, I'm going to introduce your moderator and committee chair, Ms. Martha Love, and she's going to talk about gun violence, urban neighborhoods, protecting families, and precious lives. I will say, Ms. Love always gives a wonderful, wonderful forum with wonderful panelists. So, good morning, Ms. Love.
Good morning. I would like to say thank you very much to our chair, Dr. Pamela Malone. And also, with the community brainstorming committee members, would you please stand at this time? Community brainstorming executive committee, please stand, all of you, so people can see who you are and realize all of the brilliant work that's done on behalf of this community. The issue of precious lives and neighborhoods are kind of intertwined. That's why we chose to talk about precious lives, and we are so fortunate to have one of the greatest persons in our community. I'm looking for radio time, okay? One of the greatest persons in our community, who is Eric Vaughn, will be one of the new hosts on WNOV. I want 30 minutes. We remember Eric from 1290, which was one community radio that really, really, really supported the community. And we could look to 1290, Eric Vaughn's show, and other programs for all of the information and absolutely detailed specifics about what's occurring and what we should watch out for, and that we should vote, and we should vote for Justice Bradley and a number of other people here in our community. So today, Eric is going to be the storyteller. I'm going to moderate. Eric's going to be the storyteller. In between, I'm going to kind of stop and talk about and introduce other community advocates around very, very important issues in our community. But before I do that, Diane Wilkins is from Hansberry Sand, and I'm happy you're here, Diane. Okay. We also have Ms. Brokoff, Alish, from the Sheriff's Department. Would you stand? We want everyone to know that she's here representing the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Department. So if you have any concerns about the expressway, parks, see her. Now that wasn't fair, was it? So anyway, as you all know, we have this great panel. And I would like to introduce the panel before Eric Vaughn comes up to start with the narrating around this, the production Precious Lives. Bentley Turner is our citywide, District 3 citywide Block Watch Council person. He's also extremely involved in the 15th District Johnson Park Neighborhood Association. It's Mr. Turner there. Paul, how do we pronounce Paul's last name? Paul Keelan is the Community Engagement Director for 371 Production. Russell Stamper is my city alderperson of the 15th District. Would you please stand? Sure. We want everyone to see you. See how fat Eden got? I got the mic, so I'm kind of, as they used to say, capping on everybody. Yeah, Tammy Rivera is the Executive Director of the Southside Organizing Committee, and she's new to this position. Prior to that, she did a whole host of things, and we know Judge Sanchez was elected because of her efforts. Also, she was very involved with helping us push back the strip club from being in the Walker's Point area, and we really appreciate that. And now we get to Eric Vaughn. Eric Vaughn is the producer, narrator of Precious Lives. So Eric and I have worked out how we're going to present to you this morning, as well as we have Danielle, if you would stand please, from the City Attorney's Office to really go into a lot of detail about how the neighborhood services work from the City Attorney's Office. Eric Vaughn.
Thank you, Mark. Oh, boy. This is deja vu all over again. It seems like I was just here, just a few weeks ago. I won't make a habit of this, though. Thank you, Martha. Thank you to all of you for coming out this morning. I want to, first of all, let you know that I'm not running for any office because I got calls from friends of mine who told me that I shouldn't. Unlike Wendell's friends who told him he should. My friends tell me the truth. Anyway, Wendell loves this stuff, though. Let me start by saying that 371 Productions, which is headed up by Brad Lichtenstein, who couldn't be with us today. He's actually, I don't know where he is. He's like globetrotting. He may be somewhere between D.C. and Pennsylvania and somewhere else in the world. He's working on, I think, another documentary that's going to be very powerful. It's about Congressman John Lewis. So when that's done, we'll be sure to let you know that that's there. But that's not the only thing. He's working on a whole bunch of stuff. So, but Brad came to me. I was actually still at, somebody reminded me I had on a 1290 sweatshirt this morning, a jacket. I didn't even realize that's what I had on. But I was still at 1290 when Brad came to me and asked me to be a part of this idea he had. And the idea stemmed from him hearing a broadcast, I think on NPR, and it's very similar to what we're producing now through Precious Lives. But it was a story of a kid in New York who had been gunned down in the lobby of his apartment building, and the story of this kid's life was being told by his family, by his mother, his father, his stepfather, I believe, and people who knew him. And the purpose of it was to keep those young people who were being killed and harmed in their communities alive, so that it wouldn't just be a matter of a story running in the newspaper or on the news on television for one day, and then we forget about it. We kind of ooh and ah over it. We feel bad for a few hours, and then we go back to our everyday lives. This was, the idea is to create a lasting memory of these people and then call us to action to do something about the very fact that young people are being slaughtered in the streets. And so he's hearing this story in New York, or about this thing that happened in New York, but he's also reading the paper here, and he's looking at the news here, and he's seeing that the same things are happening in this city, sadly. So he wanted to do something. And I guess when you're in the media and you don't have law enforcement powers and you don't have guns and you don't have things to really stop these things from happening, other than to pick up your camera or pick up your microphone or whatever it is you may use in your medium, you go to those things. So Brad typically uses a camera to tell his stories. He wanted to do this on radio, so he asked me to participate in some way, and I was kind of confused about what it was he wanted me to do. But then he was telling me about these people he had heard doing similar stories in other parts of the country. And one of the people he heard was a young lady who I'll introduce you to in a minute, who has come in from the cold. Yes, there is a place colder than Wisconsin. She came here from Alaska and has served as the producer of all of the pieces that we've done so far, and will continue to serve as producer. I was hoping that we could play one of those for you today, but
He's going to set it up.
he's going. Oh, okay, yeah. He has. All right, so we'll play one of the pieces, so you'll know what Precious Lives is. It's a difficult concept, I think, to grasp without hearing it, and if you haven't heard it yet, thankfully you'll hear it today. I should tell you that they do air on WNOV on Wednesdays at 10:50. And WUWM on Tuesdays at 10:50 a.m. So you can hear them there, but you'll hear at least one piece today. But back to Emily. Emily comes in from Alaska, and She has, I think, well, I don't know, Paul might take exception to this. She has the toughest job of us all working on this project, because she has to go out, interview the families and friends of the victims of these crimes. And she'll tell you about some of the stories that we've done and those that are in the hopper. But that's difficult work. I know from the many years that I was on the radio and those opportunities I had to sit with people who had gone through tragedy. It's pretty difficult day after day to hear those kinds of things. Emily's doing this every day practically. If she's not interviewing someone, she is editing and working on the stories, looking for angles to do more stories. And I would imagine for most young people, and I give her credit for being a young lady, that's pretty daunting work to deal with every day. So it's a great project. I've said to people that for me, it's been probably the most rewarding thing I've done since I've been doing this kind of work. And I'm just listening to them. After Emily goes out and does the interviews, I narrate them and do some parts of them. But it brings you closer to the realities of, again, the tragedies that occur all too frequently in our community. And our purpose is to put these in front of you and ask you, what are you going to do about them? So in addition to Emily's work in terms of production, I'll introduce you to Paul Keelan, too, who also has a pretty tough task, and his is to bring community groups and organizations closer to the project. We have over 50 partners now who work with us on these projects and who we hope will take the work that we're doing back to their organizations and into the communities that they serve and share these stories and share the work that they do to try and curb some of the violence that we see in our community. We ready?
We're ready for the tape.
Okay. I guess let me do this. We'll introduce one of them now. I don't know. You're going to do the first one that's on that? Yeah. Well, yeah, you can do the first one. The first one.
Track one.
Track one. Yeah. And this, let me just give you a quick background. Lisa Etienne. Lisa Etienne, many of you will probably not necessarily recall her name or recognize her name. But Linda Etienne is the mother of Marcus DeBack, a young boy that was killed 20 years ago. One of the first stories that got a lot of traction in this community of young people being killed in an act of violence, gun violence. He was killed on the playground, which has now been renamed in his honor. But Emily tracked his mother down and interviewed her for this piece. She's now a nurse at Children's Hospital, the same place her son died. It's a pretty touching story.
I'm Eric Vaughn. This is Precious Lives. Sierra Guyton's death shocked Milwaukee this past May. The 10-year-old was shot and killed on the playground at Clark Street School. While Sierra was the last kid killed in a playground shooting, Marcus DeBack was the first. Precious Lives producer Emily Foreman sat down with Marcus's mom almost 20 years later. Lisa Etienne is a pediatric nurse at Children's Hospital of Wisconsin in Wauwatosa.
At work, there isn't much that makes Lisa flinch, as long as she completely avoids the intensive care unit. Recently, she was called down there because they needed extra hands.
They said, well, Lisa, we need help. Can you come and help us? But they didn't warn me.
And when she got to the door, she froze.
But I forced myself to go into the room, and then there was this little one. It was on all kind of machines. And then at the end of the shift, the charge nurse came and said, Lisa, thanks for helping me. You did really well. I did it again, huh? She's like, yeah, you kind of like stuttered at the door and you looked like a deer in headlights.
Almost 2 decades ago, Lisa's son Marcus looked just like that little kid, immobile, hooked up to lines and machines. He was a patient on this exact floor at the hospital where she now works. When I walked into Lisa's house, right away, I noticed the photos covering the walls. They are all of Marcus, between the ages of 4 and 9.
7-year-old picture. One of his school pictures, oh my God, they didn't even comb his hair. They just put clothes on him, and they let him take pictures.
Before Lisa was a nurse, she was a microbiologist. and a single mom to a precocious 9-year-old boy.
Yeah, he's always thought he was just the man of the house. He gotta learn how to cook. He gotta learn how to clean. By the time he was 6, he was pressing his own clothes and washing his own clothes. One day we was going somewhere. I said, "Come on, let's go." He's like, "Give me them jeans. You're not wearing them with me. I'm finna iron them for you."
The last photo of Marcus was taken in 1995.
I was actually watching TV in the living room, and my niece answered the phone because somebody was calling, and all I heard her say, no, quit playing. He just left.
Marcus had just left to play basketball at the playground down the street.
I looked at her like, "What are you talking about?" And then she said, "They just said Marcus just got shot." And I just jumped up and started getting ready, grabbed my car keys and ran down the stairs. And as I was running down the stairs, the 2 brothers who had taken him and the driver had come back. And as I'm coming down the steps to go get in my car, he was like, "Get in." I said, "Where is my baby? Where is my baby?" He just said, "He's laying in the grass," and burst into tears. So then they took me to the playground, and there I see him, the paramedics and them working on him right there on the side of the grass.
A group of older teens and men got into an argument while playing basketball. One of them went and got a gun from his car, came back and started firing. 20-year-old Alonzo McDade struck Marcus in the leg and the back of the head from 150 feet away.
And I still don't know how I got to the hospital. Then I remember being in the ICU, people coming in and out, nobody saying much of anything, except that he's brain dead, and if he survived this, he wouldn't have any quality of life. And are you going to donate his organs? Will you donate his organs? Are you going to donate his organs? They're not telling us anything. They're not even asking us if we have any questions. They're just asking and worried about his organs as if he is just a piece of animal that you need this piece of meat and this piece of that and this to that. It was always me and Marcus, me and Marcus, me and Marcus. Now it's just me, and it's just like somebody take your heart out and just drop it on the ground, just stomp on it. And I was just like, I can't. I don't know how. I don't know how to. He was like my side, my other piece. I don't know how to function without it. I was just gone. I just driving. Just said, I can't do this anymore. Purposely ran the red light. I can't. I don't know how to live without him. Then I was like, okay, nobody hit me. I'm supposed to be alive. I pushed a lot of people away. And I had this defense up so long that I just never wanted to let people in, because I was like, I can't get so close again. I can't get so close again. Because I can't let something take something else that I'm so close to away again, because then I might really snap. I don't know where I would be. So I just kept up this defense for forever.
Lisa's still guarded in her personal life, but as a nurse, she cares for people every day. Patients tell her all the time how she's their favorite.
You're in the hospital, I'm gonna fix you, or at least get you better enough to go back home. Because I couldn't fix him. Kind of. Yep, I couldn't fix him, but hey, this is a troubled person. I'm gonna talk to this one. I can fix this one. I can fix one at a time, and just couldn't fix the one I really wish I could have.
So that's Precious Lives. That's one life that touches many. Emily, why don't you come?
How many have there been so far?
How many what?
How many programs so far?
No questions.
11 episodes so far.
Just come on up.
11 episodes so far.
So,
Tell them too about their. They don't learn
about what?
They don't learn about them. That there are some other parts.
I know, I will. Okay, hi. So that's just one example of a Precious Life story. Because when we started the series, it was kind of about paying tribute to those that we've lost to gun violence. And that was more of a documentation of grief with Lisa. And so the series, well, let me just give you an overview of what Precious Lives is. It's a 2-year radio story series stories like this, 5 to 7 minutes long. We're going to air a new story every week on WUWM, WNOV, and the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel has a podcast. We chose 2 years because it's an opportunity to really dig deep on this topic and explore it in a new way that maybe the media hasn't done before. With Lisa, this story is one side of what we heard about the Marcus DeBack story. This is a story of a grieving mother. But now we have an opportunity. We did another story with a friend who was there that day, who saw Marcus get shot and killed. So we want to use each story as a jumping off point to explore that it's not just one family or one person that's affected, it's a community. So, for example, maybe I'll just give you a snapshot of what my last week looked like. Last night, I spent last night at Med Unit 5, which is the busiest med unit in Milwaukee. It's at 27th and Capitol. So I talked to a lot of paramedics there about what they see every day, how they respond to a gunshot wound, how they're able to do their job, how they cope, how their work has affected their opinions about gun violence in Milwaukee. I also earlier this week interviewed a 37-year-old man whose mother shot herself when he was 17 months old. And that tragedy kind of inspired the work that he's doing now. He helps run support groups with Moms Demand Action. And then I also interviewed a concealed carry instructor, someone that gives free concealed carry classes with Wisconsin Carry, this class that takes place in a bar, and why he feels like people should have concealed carry. And that story is more about people's reasoning for why they feel they need this thing. What are they afraid of? What personal thing have they experienced that's leading them to get this? So we're trying to cover a very kind of wide spectrum to show all the different people that are affected by this topic. And the power of radio is that, I got to know Lisa, and still when I hear her, I'm moved. I know what type of person she is. I know that she's a warm person. She's caring. She's strong. And I kind of want people to get that too, because when you start to care and meet people in that way, you start to feel more invested in your community. And so this radio gives you an opportunity to connect with people beyond your block, to get them caring about what's going on. So that's why I do this work. And you're probably thinking, why I'm coming here from Alaska. What do I know about Milwaukee? Why am I here? Why am I doing this series? Gun violence, no one's immune to gun violence. It's everywhere. And it's a topic to really look at so many other issues that affect the community. Look at education, economy, race, and to spend 2 years on one topic to connect people with it a little bit more is just really meaningful way to meaningful. It's meaningful. So, yeah, I don't know what else. Paul. So another part of this is I'm the producer. I'm making these stories, but we want these stories to do something. We want them to be used more than just airing on the radio, and we want to go beyond that. And so Paul, in his role, he's figuring out ways to use these stories as tools to amplify what's happening in communities, highlight positive work that people are doing. So he's connected with all these partners in Milwaukee. So he can tell you more about that. But so here's Paul Keelant.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me today. And Emily actually does have the hard job. I get to spend my day talking with organizations and people around the city that are doing really positive work. I spend my day talking with people like Charlene Moore over at Urban Underground talking about youth leadership development. I talk to people from the Medical College of Wisconsin and the work and the research that they're doing to help understand violence as a public health issue. And so with this series, that's one of the main things that we're trying to do is we're trying to frame this as a public health issue. We're talking about homicide, suicide, accidental death, traumatic injury, and how that affects a community. So we're talking to shooters, we're talking to victims, we're talking about guns and where they're coming from, and we're talking about the environments that illuminate these situations. So we're really trying to talk all the way around the issue of gun violence in Milwaukee, in the suburbs, in rural Wisconsin. We're really trying to take a wide look at the work that we're doing, or at violence as a public health issue. So we have about 50 different community partners, and those partners are everything from the DA's office to the public health department to Running Rebels to the Holton Youth and Family Center. So it's organizations that are working on this issue in many different types of ways. And my role is to meet and hear about the work that's being done in our communities and try to connect the work that's being done to stories that can move people to participate in the work that's being done. So if you noticed that at the end of this past episode that we listened to, it connected with Project Ujima. So we have the goal with each episode is to move you, but then move you to action. So I've been doing a lot of small table meetings with our community partners. We have so many people doing so many great things in Milwaukee, and a lot of times they're disconnected from each other, whether it's because people are extremely busy in the work that they're doing, funding is lacking, people are overextended. A lot of organizations aren't connecting with each other, even though they're working on similar issues. So that's one of the roles that I've taken on in this project is really taking a survey of the work that's being done in Milwaukee and trying to connect people that are working on similar or complementary issues. So we've been doing small table meetings with our partners over the past month, and we'll be continuing on throughout the rest of the project, where every week I bring 3 different partners together that don't know each other very well or feel like they're working on things that relate but aren't collaborating, and really trying to find places where we can work together around reducing violence in our city, region, state. So another thing is really trying to find out how we can use the radio series as a tool in the work that's already being done. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about taking stories and the work that's being done in our city and connecting them together and collectively amplifying the work that we're already doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
What did you think of that radio piece? Was it chilling? Was it sad? Does it motivate you to help protect our children in our community? That was a question, actually. Yes. Do you feel pretty motivated behind that sad, sad tape to protect the interest of our children in this community? Please say yes. Yes. We're on TV, and I need you to respond. The TV guy's right here. Yes. Okay. Yes. The television program will be replayed on Channel 14. Matta, can you give us some more stuff about contact information on the internet? And
so we're Channel 14 on Time Warner Cable, Channel 99 on AT&T Uverse in all of southeastern Wisconsin. That'll be then Matta 14 through Channel 99.
That's pretty good stuff.
Then our website is MilwaukeeCommunityMedia.com. And the be on there as an on-demand video. So go to the video on-demand section, MilwaukeeCommunityMedia.com.
Thank you.
Okay. And by the way, Eric Vaughn is the chair of Meta Community Media, and we really appreciate him. I'm one of the producers as well. Now I would like to introduce a couple of folk. City Treasurer Spencer Coggs. I seen him when he came. Oh, there he is in the back, Spencer Coggs. And also State Representative Fred Kessler. He's in the back. And Fred, thank you very much for all you do in this community around education. We appreciate everything you and Joan have done and will continue to do in the future. Thank you. Okay, we have also a very distinguished person, that is Dana Worrell Patterson. And Dana Worrell Patterson is the chairperson of the Human Trafficking Task Force of Greater Milwaukee. And between Dana and her team, they have done an outstanding job creating the awareness around human trafficking and letting everyone know we have to continue to save our children. Our children are being ravished in this community and around the world to $130 billion. Our children are being sold into modern-day slavery. And that's why the community organizing, community associations are extremely important nowadays. So Dana, I just want to recognize you, as well as Faith Polis. Faith Colas is with the Salvation Army, and the Salvation Army, well, we all know Faith Colas. She's one of the daughters of the community. And Faith Colas works, like I said, with the Salvation Army. And the Salvation Army, way back in the 1800s, started helping people that were trafficked, either labor or sex trafficked. And so in May, there's going to be a seminar held in Oak Creek about and answering some of the questions about what is human trafficking and what can the community do to help our children. So Faith Colas, we really appreciate you and everything that you do. Okay. Now I would like to introduce to you one of our community-based neighborhood association, I would like to introduce to you Bentley Turner. And Bentley Turner is the District 3 Citywide Block Watch Council. And Bentley's volunteer position is so critical to what happens in this city. It's just really, really kind of unbelievable. Something as less comprehensive as, sometimes people think being a part of a block watch group is a lot of detail. It requires a lot of work, and it really does not. It just requires for you to come to a meeting, listen, and then just kind of follow directions about how you can help protect your neighborhood and your children. So without any further ado, Bentley Turner.
Good morning. Thank you, Martha, for that introduction. I wasn't expecting all that, but in any event, how much time do I have?
A few minutes.
A few minutes, okay. I'm here basically as a result of, incident that happened to me when I moved into my neighborhood. 10 years ago, my wife and I, or actually 12 years ago, my wife and I got the bug. We wanted to get out of apartment living, decided we wanted to live in a house. And we looked at suburban areas, looked at houses that were there, and we looked at places in the outskirts where you could probably build. And we saw that, man, there's pluses and minuses to living really far from the city. At the time, the Marquette interchange was being done. There was a lot of work being done downtown. And more importantly, the city was trying to promote home ownership within areas that had been on the downturn. And they were promoting new home construction. And I thought, on my bucket list, I said, I watched other people build a house. I said, I want to do it at least once in my life. And so we decided to do so. So we looked around the city and picked an area that had been a troubled area, but we thought we saw value in what was going to come, and we said, this is the right thing to do. And so we went through the home construction process. It was fun. We enjoyed it. It was 181 days. I taped every one of those days, know every piece of my house. It was fun. 2 days after we moved in, some locals decided they want to take my stuff. And I had a couple sons, and we sitting there watching them. I'm like, we're just watching them. And my sons, they go to, they want to, take it to the streets, so they take off out there. My wife's, she's saying we made a mistake, we should have never come here. I'm like, no. I said, what are we gonna do? I said, they're leaving. I don't know how, I don't know when, but they're leaving. We're here for the long haul. Call the police department, said, what can we do? Police said, you guys got to get neighbors organized. He said, because many of my neighbors were going through the same process. We just happened to be the first one hit. And B, we said, if it happens to us, it can happen to you. Are you just going to stand by and take this, or are you going to take action? We decided, banded together, we're going to take action. And so I didn't know nothing about Neighborhood Watch. I'm like, what do we do? He said, get you some concerned residents, get them together, and come and we'll talk. We'll have a sit down and we'll talk. We'll talk about the things you need to understand about watching over your community, and particularly your block. And so we went, I had about 15 residents who agreed to go and participate for 2-hour sessions, and we were deemed a block watch. With that, we learned a lot of things. The police departments are there to help people through traumatic situations. Because, moving wasn't the answer. Where you going to move to, and how do you avoid crime? B, I got a mortgage. I can't leave. Now, I'm not planning on leaving. So how do we get control of the environment? And more importantly, raise the awareness. We have learned over the years that, first of all, you have to know there's an issue. And you have to be informed. People who know about what's happening in these neighborhoods are the people who live there. First of all, and then if you just pay attention and watch, every neighborhood has a pulse. You know who's coming, who's going, who belongs, who doesn't, who the people that sometimes they get kind of off the chain, and what's normal for them and what's abnormal. And you start to come up with projects that involve engaging your residents. I lived in an apartment complex that probably had about 120 units, didn't know anybody. When I got to my neighborhood, which has about 160 homes, I said at a minimum, you have to know the person to your left, to your right, directly across the street, and directly behind you. If you know those people, that's the start of your little neighborhood watch. And if everybody on the block had that same approach, everybody would know everybody. Knowing them is one thing. Getting engaged, involved with, we don't want to come together just because there's negatives going on. The negatives will bring you together, trust me. Get your house broken into, get your car stolen, have somebody on your block get shot. It will bring you together. But we said, we got to stop coming together because something bad happened. How can we take control and try to create an environment where we come together for positive? So we started to look at what could we do. We have a park near us. The park was in total disarray. The park was Johnson's Park at the time. We first moved in. It was a forgotten park. I don't know if the county has spent any time in it. It had big old hills on either side of that park. It was like going into a fishbowl. You couldn't be seen from 20th Street, Fond du Lac, and it was all kind of stuff happening in that park. And we walked that park and we looked at that park and said, this park's got to get cleaned up. Let's start there first. Kids need a place to play, and we need to take some of the hiding spots away from negative activities in the park. So we work with the county, the city, and other folks to make that happen. Now you got beautiful sight lines through that park, and people are putting all kind of investment in that area because of residents being involved. We also recognize that we have to create opportunities for residents to come together. So we have a summer activity and a fall activity and a winter activity where a bunch of folks who realize that it's good to come together, we'll do neighborhood cleanups, flower giveaways, beautification projects. We attend a lot of organizational meetings in the city that talk about neighborhood improvement. There's plenty of resources out there to get hooked into and funding to drive projects within your neighborhood. It can be simple stuff. The point is, you create an activity and you encourage residents to attend, they'll come out and they'll get involved. And we don't just let them come out and just partake in the free stuff. We always drop a little knowledge on them. And we try to keep them informed about what's happening, more importantly, what's happening at the city level that affects our neighborhood. We meet monthly. That's a little much for some groups, but we have a lot to do, and we have a lot of innovative, creative people. And we're always looking at what's going on that's from a positive standpoint that positively affects the community. I'm involved heavily with public safety. I believe if you don't feel safe, people won't come out. People don't come out. Other folks move in. Businesses won't come to your neighborhood. People don't work. And it's just a continual cycle. So you got to make people feel safe, a place to come out, work, and play, and live. So we work very strongly with the Milwaukee Police Department, primarily for learning best practices that are being done all over the country that tend to be successful in dealing with the common problems many neighborhoods face. I always ask people, just in your own mind, think about where you live, wherever it is, and think about, would you let your grandchildren play in certain areas of where you live? Yes or no, and if so, why? And you ask yourself that. Then you ask yourself, are there places that you would let your kids play, and it may not be in your neighborhood? So you have to ask yourself, what's the difference? A place is a place. People are people. The question becomes, what influence do the people who live in these areas have over the places they let their children play? And so if you don't see something that appears to be right, you have to figure out who can help you. Residents, we're just people who live there, we pay taxes. But the city, elected officials, Alderman Stamper is somebody who's been working very closely with us since he's been elected. We worked with the previous alderman extensively. He can talk a little bit about how we work in collaboration. He brings resources, and any alderman can bring resources to your neighborhood. He's going on neighborhood walks with us. And we pointed out the problems: the dope house, the raggedy house, the wild out kids, the neighbors who don't know how to conduct themselves, the vacant lots, the dumping. And we just make an inventory, and he sees it up close, and then he brings people from the city to sit and hear our complaints, and all of a sudden actions start taken. The beautiful thing is you can be informed about all of this. We know if you report issues to the city, whether it's the police department, DNS, you can be updated as to what happened. I don't have to ask him what happens. I ask him to give me the inside of what happens, but more importantly, there are reporting systems that'll tell you what's going on. We know how many places got violations. We know how many violations they have. We know when they're going to go down to renew a license. We know what our position is going to be, and we work with the aldermen to say, reflect our position. Getting involved with your alder people is in your case of your county folks, is important. Having a committed residents in wanting to shape and plan for the neighborhood is important. If you don't plan to have your neighborhood be better, it's not going to be. You have to make a concerted effort. A neighborhood is a place where if you don't care, people feel like where you don't care, we can do anything. And I go back to when I was a kid, there were standards. We kind of lost that, and we're trying to go back to that, to set some standards for behavior, standards for what we want the place to look like. We don't have to be super rich, but we got to be clean. You know, we're not asking you to not have no fun, but be respectful. That's just basic living. So, you know, I'm going to sit down and I'll take a lot of questions because I got a lot to say, but the bottom line is you got to get involved. If you're not moving, and you plan on staying, are you going to just stay and tolerate anything? Or are you going to try to find people and resources that you can take your concerns to and try to change at least one thing? In our realm, it was raise awareness, keep people involved, get them engaged. And we can talk about how we do that if questions and answer period. Thank you.
I would like to introduce to you the Alderman of the 15th Aldermanic District, Russell Stamper II.
Good morning, community. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. And I always look forward to community brainstorming. It's one of the few outlets that we have that we can get together collectively as a community and discuss topics that are so important to our community. So before I start, I'd like to recognize and honor my father, Judge Russell Stamper Sr. You got to do that. You got to do that. And I also want to thank the brainstorming staff and recognize the cooks and the people in the back who don't usually get recognition. Mrs. Brazil, Mary, Ruben, thank you guys so much for sustaining community brainstorming. The breakfast is always great. So I'm going to get started. My good friend and my surrogate auntie, Miss Martha Love, asked me to come discuss the topic of neighborhoods in the city and how to develop a successful neighborhood. So when any good elected official knows that she's also a constituent, so any good elected official knows that when a constituent asks you to do something, you do your best to fulfill that request. Am I right? So, let me get started. How do you build a successful neighborhood? Number one, you need adequate resources. Bentley talked about it briefly, but I rely heavily on the combination of the Department of Neighborhood Services and the Milwaukee Police Department. And this is mainly for safety, for the appearance of the neighborhood, and for the health, the overall health of the neighborhood. That's the first component you need. The second, which is the strength of the neighborhood, is you need strong community-based organizations and you need strong neighborhood associations. And their collaboration with the residents, with the business owners, and with law enforcement, you can have a successful neighborhood. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I rely on the Department of Neighborhood Services and Milwaukee Police Department. And I see Danielle here, and she and I work together on expediting foreclosures and getting bad landlords out the district. So the City of Milwaukee's Department of Neighborhood Services deals with inspections and permits related to buildings and business activities, as well as environmental matters that impact the health and public safety. Their job and their mission is to enforce building, zoning, fire, environmental, property maintenance, and other ordinances to protect the value, investments in the neighborhoods and our commercial properties. And what is of stupendous importance to me and why I rely heavily, stupendous. I said it right?
Yeah, you did.
All right.
I wanted you to know I got it.
It's a new word I've been using. They are supposed to support this community's goals in building safe and healthy neighborhoods and increasing investments and the economic vitality throughout the city. So to get a sense of my district and how I use the Department of Neighborhood Services for positively changing our neighborhoods, since I've been elected, which is almost 11 months now.
Trust your supervisor.
Well, true, but let me just talk about the automatic issues. 49,222 inspections have been done since I've been elected. That is more than double the city average. There's two different departments within the Department of Neighborhood Services. The Residential Code Enforcement, they have conducted 2,444 orders on correcting the condition of a property, which means get your property fixed. 2,560 cleanup orders, which means clean up your yard, clean up your property. 59 citations, which means you didn't do it. And 102 advisories, which is a warning to get it done. So that's a total of 5,166 orders under residential code enforcement since Russell Stamper II has been the alderman. Now, my first month in office, I requested a comprehensive garbage and litter sweep due to the challenges of my district. I have a lot of dirty alleys and a lot of absentee landlords. So that resulted in the commissioner giving me 2 special enforcement inspectors just for our district. And what they did individually was 275 cleanup orders, and 60% were voluntarily complied with. The other 170 orders resulted in an intensive sweep referred to private contractors, and that money got added to the tax roll. So, as you can see, the importance of Department of Neighborhood Services to a district, that is why I rely heavily on them, and that's my favorite department. But keep in mind, I represent Locust to Valete, the highway to 51st Street, which means I have Galena, Brown Street, Center, Cherry, the inner city, North Avenue. That's my community where I was born and raised, and I'm proud to represent that. And the residents need to feel proud of where they live. And that's why it's so important that we have community-based organizations to stand up and make these departments treat our community just like they treat Bayview and just like they treat the South Side and River West. Treat the inner city the same way. That's all we ask. Now, the second part of the Department of Neighborhood Services, the Special Enforcement Division, and the Community Policing Unit, and they work closely to specifically eliminate nuisances, improve building conditions, reduce crime, and improve the quality of life in our community. So since I've been elected, Special Enforcement Division has issued 495 orders to correct the condition and 23 advisories. In addition, 213 properties have been placarded because they were labeled as unfit or unsafe. Currently, 786 properties are in a reinspection program where they're provided the opportunity to get their property up to code. So they're given time, they work with the alderman, they work with the inspectors to get their property in compliance. Now, just last week, to show you the significance of special enforcement, just this week, we closed down a drug house on 15th and Clark and on 1801 West North Avenue, and the residents couldn't be more happy. It's a difference when it's activity, loud noise, drugs, shooting. You go through that weekly, all day, and then all of a sudden it's gone. That's a huge difference. And they are very, very happy about that. So I'm proud to do that as much as I can. So it's up to, I want to say, Danielle, it's up to what, about 30 drug houses so far? All right. So let me get to the second component on how to develop a successful neighborhood, which is the heart and soul of my district and what any neighborhood needs to rely strongly on. And this is what Bentley and I work together on closely. It's the community-based organizations and the neighborhood associations are made up of effective partnerships through residents, business owners dedicated to positive change in the neighborhood. They need to all have 5 major things: solving crime, but most importantly, preventing crime. Excuse me? You can't hear me? Okay, all right. Creating a safe environment, is that better? Youth engagement and safety, neighborhood revitalization, and civic engagement. That's what you need to have minimally as a community-based organization. And the strength and power of a neighborhood is developed when residents take an active role in their neighborhood. So I grew up in the Sherman Park neighborhood and on 23rd and Brown when my parents used to drop me off all the time when they had community events to do. Pop and Mom used to drop me off at my grandmother's house right on 23rd and Brown. But back then, you had a sense of community. You had nosy neighbors. Now, as a youth, you don't like nosy neighbors because they always in your business. I thought they were always in my business, but Today, as an alderman, I want all my neighbors to be nosy neighbors. They can tell, they're better than detectives. They can tell you what car, what color, who got out the car, what kids were there, what they said, what time they left, and whatever. They were nosy, but they were the best neighbors. We need to get back to having nosy neighbors. Maybe we'll start a nosy neighbor program. Now, the main thing here, you guys, is to improve a neighborhood, you need communication and collaboration with all these departments. And I do want to recognize that these 3 neighborhoods received a nationally recognized award. Milwaukee did, out of 516 cities that applied. Milwaukee received a MetLife Foundation Community Police Partnership Award. First time ever that a single city has won 3 awards in the same year. That was great. The neighborhoods were the Washington Park Partner neighborhood, the Harambe neighborhood, and then the River West. Somebody talked about the Houghton Family Youth Center.
Did money come with that or only awards?
Something came. I'm not sure what it was, but it was something. I don't know if they came up here and they did a big presentation. They gave them something. I don't know if it was money, but it was something. Okay. All right. So that was good. That was good. So what I'm saying in collaboration, I said the police department, the district attorney's office, the community prosecution unit, community-based organizations, and the aldermen make up a successful neighborhood. Now, the main thing we want in any neighborhood is public safety. We want better housing. We want workforce initiatives. We want promoting and producing home ownership, and we want youth engagement. Those are the goals for my community-based organizations in my neighborhoods. And that's how we're going to get a successful neighborhood. Now, how much time do I have, Ms. Love?
Yeah.
I'm done? I have 2 examples, but okay. Thank you very much.
We are really fortunate to have Russell Stamper II to be our alderperson. Really fortunate.
Me too.
Oh, that's right. He's also Eric and Faith's.
He's my nosy neighbor.
See what Eric. I would like to bring up Dana World Patterson before we bring up the city attorney's office. And I would like to ask Dana, what's important to children that's human trafficked about safe neighborhoods? Dana World Patterson.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Martha. What's important to children is that in neighborhoods is what every child would want. Every child wants to be safe in their community. Every child wants to be safe in their homes. And unfortunately, what we found is that 13 is the average age that girls in the United States are trafficked. So we know that there is a disconnect within the homes, within our communities, and it is important to be nosy. It is important to pay attention to our young people because someone else is, and that's how they're able to go in, notice the vulnerabilities, speak to those vulnerabilities, and our girls and our boys, but our girls in particular, are taken away. So it's important for us to be nosy. I like that. It is important for us to pay attention. It is important for us to know, if you know that the home situation isn't good, bring the young people in. Pay attention to them, because I guarantee you there's one scenario, and I will be brief, but inside the home, it was not a good situation. She was 14 years old. She was on the porch reading every day during the summer. And it was someone that was paying attention to her, that was riding by every day. He had the audacity and the courage to say, "Hey, I noticed that you like reading." And she said, "Someone is paying attention to me? And he knows that I like to read?" And it was through that engagement that he was able to sweep her away. Someone in the neighborhood. That ride ended her up, she ended up in Chicago for 5 years. So it is important to be nosy. It is important to pay attention. It is important to bring our young people in, to speak, to say, hey, so that they know that they have a soft and a safe landing with us. Thank you.
Justice Bradley, I just want to express today how important it is that you clearly understand the heartbreak of mothers and fathers about their children that are murdered, as well as murdered, living murder of human trafficking, our boys and girls. Our boys are 8 years old, they're taken into slavery, sex slavery. Our girls are 13, they're taken into sex trafficking, sex slavery. We need to have this to stop in our society. Every chance I get, I will mention to everyone about human trafficking in our society. It is ravishing. It is creating more trauma than the wars to our children. We need everyone's help to pay attention. And Alderman Stamper couldn't have said it better. We need everybody to be a nosy neighbor to watch our children. So with that, we have Danielle that's coming up. She's with the City Attorney's Office.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Danielle Bergner. I oversee the Neighborhood Revitalization section in the City Attorney's Office, which is a new section as of last year. I first want to tell Alderman Stamper that I will be following up with him on this Nosy Neighbor program because I was asked recently in a newspaper article, what do you think is the single greatest predictor of success in a neighborhood? And I said, without question, without hesitation, it's the level of investment and the level of commitment of the people who live in that neighborhood. There is no amount of money, there is no amount of city involvement or county involvement that can beat the investment and the dedication of the people who live on a block. And I'll give you an example of that. So when nuisance properties, for example, cannot be resolved at the police department level, at the Department of Neighborhood Services level, they get escalated to our office for legal action. Well, we have to make a court case, right? We have to go into court, we have to go in front of a judge, and we have to make a case for closing down a property or for the sale of a property. That is very difficult to do without neighbors sitting there in front of that judge telling them exactly what this property is doing to their neighborhood. I can stand up there and I can explain all the legalities to the judge all day long, and you know what? That is not nearly as important as the people who live next door to a nuisance property showing up at court and telling that judge what this property is doing to them and to their neighborhood. We have a case right now in front of a judge. This is an after-set party house. We've had it boarded now for the better part of 6 months. It took us 1.5 years to get it to that point because judges are very reluctant to close down properties generally. This is the site of a double homicide, hundreds of shots fired. The property has consumed 400 plus hours of police services every year in calls for service. You've probably read about it in the newspaper, actually. It's been over the newspaper in the last year or so. We have a final hearing next month on that property. We're asking for the appointment of a receiver so that the property can be sold to a responsible party and so that these neighbors can be relieved of the chaos that this property has, that they've been living with for the last 3 years or so. We would not be to that point in this case if it weren't for the fact that I have 12 people who show up at every single court hearing and tell that judge what this property does. I had a woman who broke down in tears on the stand explaining the psychological stress that this property brings to her on a daily basis. And so if I can impart one thing today, is to tell you to be involved. Show up to those court hearings. It matters. Thank you.
Neighborhood organizing is one of the most crucial organizing efforts in this city at this time. A lot of us don't have money to have cameras in our houses or to have security, private security, walk up and down our block and help protect us while we work, play, and sleep. But community organizing is critical. And years ago, we talked about community organizing. Some people did it and some didn't. But it is more critical now. All of the remarks that you're hearing today are for you to go back and do some simulants of community organizing. If you just touch 3 or 4 houses in your block to ensure that one of those neighbors will be nosy and will keep contacting you if anything happens, then this whole effort will be a great, great effort for today. I would like to recognize State Representative Mandela Barnes. Stand up. And Leon Young, who is my representative, he has Mr. James Nelson, who is representing him today. I would like to introduce an executive director of the Southside Organizing Group, Tammy Rivera, and she will share with you how they were very successful with helping us not allowing Silk Strip Club to be in the Walkers Point area, as well as a number of other initiatives that they're doing in the Walkers Point and the Southside organizing area. Tammy.
Well, I'm going to say buenos dias.
All
right. I first want to say, especially because we're in a church, I'm going to just take a personal moment to say how divine God is in bringing us together around issues that affect the human soul. And so I just want to make some connections for us so that we can know that this time was predestined and it is time for us to move forward and do things in a greater way, especially for the children. And so I want to start by saying my father was gunned down in an alley on the south side before he was 40 due to his involvement with drug selling because he was a heroin addict. And so God uses our pain for much power in our lives, and I believe that's why I have purpose in my life, because of the pain that came into it. So I tend to embrace pain and use it because that's God's design. So before I get in trouble at work for talking about church, I'm going to switch gears now. Now you're getting Tammy, the executive director. But I want to talk about those very human experiences, because those human experiences make you mine and make me yours, makes you the nosy neighbor, which gives us the right and the responsibility to organize in our communities. And so I want to tell you a couple of things. Now, I know we're short on time, and you're lucky because I happen to be Puerto Rican. And that means we can talk fast, okay? And so I want to make a couple of little connections. Day and I met when I was a COO at Girl Scouts. Martha made me and Phil Chavez pay a lot of dues before she gave us her endorsement when I was running him for Milwaukee Municipal Court Judge, and we earned that, and now we have a very faithful relationship because of that. Spencer Coggs I met in the mid-1980s when I became the baby organizer at the Hunger Task Force, organizing single mothers in the food pantries. And so very grateful to have these connections and have them come back over and over in my life. And so I will take zero credit for the Silk shutdown, although I think it was a beatdown that needed to happen, and it happened viciously. And so, but it is a testament to what people can do together and say, we ain't having that in our community for a lot of reasons. You have the right to have a business, and we have the right to say, but not at my house. And so with that, I want to talk about a couple of things, but I need my eyes because now closing the 50, the eyes are giving up. Southside Organizing Committee. It's our 25th anniversary this year, and I'm happy to have Carmen Cabrera, one of our board members, with us today, who is also a baby of the civil rights movement in this community, and in particular in the Southside community. Very honored to serve in the organization that she leads. And it's our 25th anniversary, and I just arrived. I came in January. I've had a lifetime of nonprofit experience, but I started my grown-up experience as an organizer, as I said, at the Hunger Task Force. I was there for 7 years. And in my newness, I think it's going to be 3 months and a couple of days, we are launching a campaign. It's called the Go Blue campaign on the South Side. And that's to recognize all of a sudden grassroots organizing became popular again. Do you remember it wasn't popular for a couple of decades? When I was organizing in the mid-1980s, and I was the baby, so okay, I was irreverent, I was militant, I wasn't saved back then, so excuse me for my language, all of those who knew me back in the day. And you may not recognize me because I change my hair color often, like most of us ladies do. If you remember during those times, what was happening in the 80s? Who was our governor? It was Tommy Thompson, and welfare reform came. And it was a big fight, and we lost many things in that time, and I don't know that we've ever recovered those times. And then because of that wipeout, I believe grassroots organizing funding was wiped out. And I'm glad to say it's back, and I'm glad to say I'm organizing when it's back. So I'm very excited about that. In that mid-time, I learned how to raise money, how to build finance systems, how to do assessments and outcomes. So God just took me on a road to do what I do better and use me better. And so our Go Blue campaign, so we're grassroots organizers, that's the goal. And we are building leadership, unity, and engagement on the South Side. And this is what we're doing for the next couple of years. In our leadership efforts, we have, I'm happy to quietly announce, because we haven't announced this yet publicly, that Jesus Salas and Carmen Cabrera will be leading a legacy group that is going to be housed at SOC. And that legacy group is collecting all the civil rights activists who are still alive on the South Side and making sure that those stories are captured and that young people get an opportunity to sit, break bread, and hear firsthand what happened in the times that gave them the privileges that they have today. You know, it's very dangerous to be a privileged person. This is what I remember when I have to work with my boys. I always have to make sure that they understand at times that they don't have privileges. They're not always appreciative, but they're 29 and 24 now. One day they're going to be appreciative, because I don't want them to be people of privilege. But anyway, we want the young people to understand what went before. And also, we have a generation of people doing some incredible things. So we want to pair them up with the power of the past and the power of the present. And so that's one of the efforts that we're doing. The long-term plan of that is to have a movement museum on the South Side. I was annexed to this group about 30 years ago, because as you know, I told you my dad was killed when he was young and my mom died the year before, so we were orphaned. But God is very faithful, and I have many mothers and many fathers, and that group annexed me. And so there's about 30 of them, Carmen, still alive. We're losing about 1 or 2 a year, so there's an urgency to move that forward. And our long-term plan next couple of years is to have this museum, because I have firsthand witness of the buttons and the berets and the vests and the signs and the posters and the books. And so we want to put that all together. And then related to that museum, we're going to have a leadership institute where these same people are reading from their books, signings, having poetry, watching documentary clips, so that we don't forget what had to go before us to get where we are today. And then in terms of unity, if you've been to the South Side, you're going to realize something. We are the most diverse neighborhood in the state of Wisconsin. Latinos, whites, blacks, Asians, Native Americans, other. Not only culturally, but economically. I live on the boulevard. If you're all familiar with the domes, there's that big boulevard that runs in front of it. We have a house that's worth $25,000, and we have a house that's worth $250,000. Mine's not even in the middle, but I do live on the boulevard. Don't look at it till my porch is done, DNS workers. And so we want to say, why did that happen? Was it our immigrant community, or is it something on the South Side that says we can coexist together? However, being me, type A, right? You know those people. The only daughter in the family, gets to boss everybody around. I'm not satisfied, so I want to make sure that Milwaukee's South Side takes that unity to the next level and says, let's make sure that unity is not just coexisting, but that it's powerful. And so we're going to work to do that. Now, that's the beauty of the South Side. If you've had time in the South Side, you're going to realize we are a siloed South Side. We do not collaborate, unlike the black community. You all can fundamentally disagree and come together when you need to. We have not achieved that on the South Side. And so I don't have the answer to that, but I'm willing to take it up with a group of people who are willing to as well. And so we are going to be approaching efforts on the South Side in a collaborative effort. I also think, for the women in the room, it's a women's way of work. Sometimes people build kingdoms, but women build community. And so that's what we're going to be doing around unity. And then in terms of engagement, this is our lifeblood. We have exactly 2 phone lines in the building, and at sometimes 4 staff. So if you can imagine, we don't have time to be talking to folks. We are out in the community doing what we do, and that is very neighborhood based. And I don't need to talk to you about some of the programming Stamper was sharing with you. That's the same type of programming we do. We go, we talk to people about their community, what are their hopes, what are their pains, what are their fears, what do they want to do, and then we move forward with them. And we have a couple of efforts that we're doing in the next couple of years. One is, we are going to be servicing neighborhood groups instead of individuals moving forward. We want to take groups and say, this part of our neighborhood has no voice. This part of our neighborhood has some voice. This part of our neighborhood has loud voice. And be able to be very strategic about making sure all of our district has voice. And our district is from the lake to Miller Park, from the valley to Oklahoma, so it's a huge district. So we will be working with leaders at whatever levels they are to move their neighborhood groups forward. And so I just want to leave you again with the words that I said earlier, which are another way to say nosy neighbor, which is to remember that you are mine and I am yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. I would like to bring up now, we've heard a lot of great stuff about neighborhoods and organizing. Now I want to bring up a person, Tracy Dent, who deals with a lot of community concerns, and I'm sure you've seen him on TV, and you see him on TV at visuals at the death scenes. But I want you to know how he feels about what it is that he does. I don't want you to leave here that happy. I want you to experience the pain that I experience about modern-day slavery of 8-year-old children, 13-year-old girls. I want you to experience the pain of parents that have lost children. And it may not be fair, but I'm going to do it anyway. Tracy Dent.
I think the theme for 2015 should be nosy neighbors. I think that is very important because right now, today, we are ahead of 2014 when it comes to deaths. At this same time last year, we only had about 12 or 13 deaths. Right now, we're at 30. It shows you how serious that this is, the violence in our city is, and we need to take action. You know, it came to a point where I was doing an average of 3 vigils per week, and I got tired of it. Hearing families cry, mothers falling out at the vigils, trying to understand why their baby died, why do a parent have to bury their child. There was one incident in 2014 where this guy was running from a drug dealer. He was a drug addict. He owed him some money. So he started running towards the house. And the drug dealer started shooting at him. Shot him in the ankle, but he kept running. Next thing you know, there was a 4-year-old little boy sitting on the porch. The mother grabbed him and ran into the house, not realizing he'd been shot twice. And the first thing that came out of his mouth, he asked his mother, "Mommy, am I going to die tonight?" These are the type of situations that's happening in Milwaukee. Our children are being shot, killed by stray bullets. And then when the police comes, everybody's afraid to speak up. I help work with Sierra Guyton, the 10-year-old who was shot on the playground. And I, been with the family to this day, and they're still grieving, still trying to understand and put things in perspective of why they had to lose their baby like that. But I'm just trying to put a face with all the violence that's going on, especially with the children. And we have to start taking our blocks back, our neighborhoods back. But the only way to do that is we have to be nosy neighbors. We have to find out who's on our blocks, why they on our blocks, and who are they talking to, especially when it comes to human trafficking. That is real. The reason I said this is because I found out that there are young women, ages from like 18 to like 25, who are seeking out young women on Facebook, on social media. They putting money out there, taking pictures of money and doing all these glamorous shots and say, "Hey, you can be like me." One parent found out that what was happening because they approached her child, and she shut it down real quick and called the authorities. This is the type of action that we, not just a Black community, Latino community, we as a city need to take action and have to be serious about this because we're losing our children. When you're number 1 or number 2, number 3 in the country when it comes to human trafficking, there is a problem. And we need to react instead of being reactive. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. I would like to announce that sometimes we become afraid to talk about what's happening next door. Also, sometimes when you go to your neighborhood-based association meetings, they will tell you, fill out this hotspot form here, and we will then turn it in to the police. It's anonymous, but you got your name and your address and your phone number on there. So that's anonymous. So Alderman Stamper, along with Alderman Perez, Donovan, and several other aldermen, have talked to the police department as well as the sheriff's department about having very small and sometimes one-on-one meetings with constituents in the district. I want to give you this number first where you can call to be a part of a private meeting with the police department, Alderman Stamper and other aldermen, and the city inspectors. The number is 286-3771. What takes place in these meetings is that you can face-to-face tell all of these people what your concerns are. Your name is not mentioned, your phone number is not there, and your address is not there. Those are some of the reasons why we push back and we don't report things. But our aldermen have made this opportunity possible for you. The telephone number is 286-3771. And before Eric Vaughn comes back up, we're going to play track 2 of Precious Lives.
I'm Eric Vaughn. This is Precious Lives. Before ringing in the new year, Milwaukee remembers those lost to gun violence with a candlelight vigil. It's a 20-year tradition. There's a candle for every homicide victim in 2014, over 80 gun deaths.
My name is Reverend Leondis Fuller.
Reverend Leondis Fuller addresses the crowd at Tabernacle Baptist Church. In a 9-year period, all 3 of his sons were shot and killed just blocks from their home.
If I had the power to bring my sons back, don't you think I'd do it? But since I can't, I have to do something. You don't allow your loved one to die in vain. Allow their death to get you up and allow you to move, to create a change.
Precious Lives producer Emily Foreman learned how Reverend Fuller turned his tragedy into action.
Reverend Leondis Fuller is associate minister at New Covenant Baptist Church. He is a large man, 6'4", 240 pounds. But the suit, thick bold pattern tie, matching pocket square, and fedora make him seem larger than life. He'll be the first to tell you that the clothes don't make the man. Neither does having a kid.
I went from infanthood to boyhood to teenhood / fatherhood.
He had his first son at 15.
I was a father, technically, way before I became a man.
When he reflects on his life, he sees a commonly repeated cycle.
How can you ask somebody to be a parent and they never knew a parent?
A cycle that started with his father.
My dad should have been there to help me understand what it was about to become a man.
His father was an abusive alcoholic when he was around, so Reverend Fuller looked for ways to numb the pain.
I was a chronic alcoholic for well over 20 years. I had a drug habit of $400 to $500 a day.
That was until one Father's Day in 1990.
One evening, a drug dealer and myself were standing in my hallway in the home. My stepson, he came up to the drug dealer and asked him for $5. I said, "Boy, what's wrong with you asking that man for some money?" He said, "Dad, he has all of yours." I began to see that my children don't have anybody.
3 months of detox and he was ready to be a dad. At that point, he had 3 biological sons.
Within a 9-year period, I lost all of my children within a 9-block radius. Monty got killed in 1993.
12-year-old Monty was sitting on a porch facing Northport, Washington Road.
We'd be 33 years of age right now.
A car pulled up, someone inside fired a single bullet and hit Monty in the face.
I didn't see my son again until he was at the morgue, and I identified him as my son.
He remembers his mother's reaction the most when he arrived at the scene.
And my mom, she always showed me that she loved me, but she never told me. And she said, "You know I love you, don't you?"
Monty's death devastated his older sons.
They had some guilt trips, wondering if it was something they were better, maybe it wouldn't happen.
For instance, Reverend Fuller's second oldest, Leondis Jr., had been on a track that eventually led to prison. He spent 3 years in Prairie du Chien Correctional Facility for illegally discharging a firearm.
I was glad that he went to prison, especially if he was using a firearm and that's what got him there. I think that prison saved his life at that time.
At that time. Leondis Jr. was murdered soon after his release in 2002. Reverend Fuller remembers looking forward to his son's fresh start. He had a custodial job lined up at Miller Park. Then one day, Leondis Jr. went to hang out with his cousin.
He didn't know there was actually a hit, a mafia-style hit, out on his cousin.
They were sitting in a parked car. A man with an assault rifle riddled the car with bullets.
My son caught 7 bullets. He was conscious. He fell out the car. He told the police when they finally arrived who shot him, because they knew who shot him. It was the next door neighbor to their grandma's house.
Leondis Jr. later died at the hospital. The only child he had left was his firstborn, Lamar, the one he fathered at 15.
He was running around selling drugs and ended up being a drug addict on his own product.
An argument escalated and Lamar was shot 6 times.
That was my last biological son. and I wasn't there for his childhood as I like to be. I need to be there for him to go home to my father.
He delivered Lamar's eulogy. It has been over a decade since Reverend Fuller's last son passed. He's thought hard about what happened to his family and why, and always lands on one root cause.
Children want a family so bad.
It's almost like a mantra. It's what he said to himself when faced with his first son's shooter over a decade ago.
Because now, not only have I lost a son, this man has lost his 1-year-old too, because he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life. He'll never get a chance to be a dad.
Now, Reverend Fuller's stated purpose in life is family restoration. He runs a 13-week-long fatherhood program for men estranged from their kids. He works with ex-felons, former drug addicts, and just absent fathers.
I love them. You nurture them back to them feeling good about themselves.
He starts by reteaching values, like what it means to be a man, so that kids get a chance to break the cycle of gun violence, drug addiction, of abuse, whatever examples might have been passed down.
And my desire was not to allow any fathers to be cheated out of a relationship with their children the way I have. And there's so many fathers, they have children, but they're not involved in their children's life. And that's the tragedy.
Each time Reverend Fuller helps to restore a family, he feels that just maybe his own sons did not die in vain.
That's Precious Lives, and I appreciate you all listening. You like that? Yeah. It's hard to like, really, but appreciate it maybe is a better word. I want to thank Martha Love and the Brainstorming team for inviting us here today, and hopefully, as we suggest with these pieces, you'll be moved to do something in the neighborhoods where you live. Certainly, with the information provided by the other members of the panel this morning, you'll be moved to do those things. We happen to be, Faith is my wife, for those who don't know. I always say that because if I don't, I can't go home. But we happen to be Alderman Stamper's nosy neighbors. And since we moved into the Sherman Park neighborhood, I've noticed a lot of things. And we were talking about neighborhoods and the confusion, I think, that goes on in many of the neighborhoods in this city. We did live for 8 years on Washington Boulevard. It was quiet over there and a lot of nice people who do nice things for each other. And, you know, other than speeding cars through that neighborhood, you don't have much confusion. It's a little different. It's a little different on Sherman Boulevard, I can tell you that. And a lot of speeding cars, a lot of loud music. And I just want to mention a couple things. Alderman Stamper and I, and trust me, I've known his mom was one of my favorite people all time. His dad is one of my favorite people all time. And he's getting to move up the ladder to that status along with his parents. Because what I found is that when I call him, he's responsive. And I don't know, maybe that's the way it is with all aldermen. I don't usually call aldermen, but I've never lived in any place like Sherman Park. So I call him a lot. And one of the ideas I've shared with him is a project that he has embraced very dearly. And it's something I came up with. I like the nosy neighbor. I wish that was my idea. We also have, Faith and I have a public relations business, and we came up with a couple of projects, Slow Your Roll. And that's because when we sit in our house, we hear the cars come, we hear the tires rolling on the ground, and they ain't moving slowly. They are flying. And they go through the traffic light right in front of our house. They run through it just like there's no light there. And Sherman, and this is a street where there are police patrols almost 24 hours a day. There are motorcycle cops. When we first moved there, I was like, we got more protection over here than the mayor had on Washington Boulevard. We had motorcycles sitting in front of our house, and I'm not kidding, almost all day long. We live right across from Washington High School. So we have this project we've introduced to the aldermen. It's Slow Your Roll, and it's just a series of, it will be a campaign to get people to slow down, not just on Sherman Boulevard, but the same concerns have been expressed on Fond du Lac Avenue, probably any number of areas of the city. So the alderman has agreed that once we get it to him and he adopts it, he's going to push it through the council so that all areas of the city will begin to push this out into the city. Again, it's slow your roll. The other is turn down your sound. That's what it is. Turn down your sound. Turn down your sound. Because that's the other thing. If we don't hear the tires, we hear the music from the cars. And we live there's a bus stop right in front of our house. So we hear the buses stop. And the only thing that quiets the bus are those bass speakers in the back of these folks' cars. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what they are listening to. I'd be afraid to get in those cars. But it's very unclear. It's just booming. So we've introduced these two campaigns that we hope that the city will adopt, and hopefully we'll have a quieter, safer summer as a result. You know, this idea that we need to slow down as a result. You know, we've got kids getting run over by cars. We've got deadly accidents occurring just this week on Lloyd. It's a horrible accident. 2 young people killed because they're flying. So we've got to slow them down some kind of way. So again, I want to thank Martha, thank the Brainstorming folks. Thank you to my partners over at 371 Production, Emily and Brad. Bentley, in addition to all of his community stuff, I'm going to put you out there. If you need computer work done, this guy is a brilliant mind when it comes to computers. I call him all the time when I got a problem, and he answers. So thank you all.
I want to thank the panel again for all of their wisdom and their time for Saturday morning. Thank our aldermen. I want to thank Sam Johnson for extending the time, and I most certainly want to thank you, and I want to make, I hope that we have raised your consciousness enough to become nosy neighbors. Thank you very much for attending.